Hello, my name is Lauren George, and today I will be showing you my unit plan on 3D and digital media art. This unit and these lessons were taught to my 5th and 9th period studio and digital media art classes, grades 9 through 12. My big idea was to focus on how to incorporate the elements of space and three-dimensional aspects into the media arts. Up to this point, students have mainly been working within two-dimensional space, programs such as Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Flash, and Piskel. I wanted to show the students that even digital media can break through the confines of the screen, and they can use aspects of the digital world to create sculptural elements that can physically be held in their hands. One of the main reasons I chose to focus on this topic and my rationale behind it inadvertently and coincidentally ended up tying back to some of our topics of discussion throughout the semester. Administration proposing integration of specific technologies and then being overwhelmed and reluctant about using those technologies. I had referred to the 3D printer that was in the front of my media lab as a monster at the beginning of the semester when I was first coming up with ideas for this unit. And here is a picture of that monster. A little daunting at first, but I wanted to overcome those feelings, and I wanted to stop complaining and just learn how to use this machine and on my own terms. So that's what I ended up doing. In the end, and reflecting back on the process, it was actually not a very bad experience at all. I rather, in fact, enjoyed it, and it was wonderful, and I actually look forward to using the 3D printer next year. I'll go into my reflection a little bit later. In reference to my unit and lesson plans, I use the format my department is following, and since I'm probably going to be the one writing the curriculum for this course, I figured I'd two birds it and just use the same format. I tagged all of the main topics in my table of contents, so it would be easier to locate specific information. It also made it easier when I was writing it. I could just go right to specific sections. If I click on establishing goals, for example, this will take me right to the learning standards. I didn't write all of them out because, as you can see, there'd be quite a few of them. So I have the learning standards for the New York State learning standards for the arts specific to the media arts. I also have the ISTE standards. If you wanted to take a look at them, you can just simply click on the links that are there, and they'll take you right to the websites and match up the different standards. And since there's quite a few of them, once again, that's why I didn't write out each and every single individual one. But in a nutshell, students are actually utilizing and creating with the technologies. They're relating it to artists in the field as well as the different real-world applications. The first lesson in the unit plan that I introduced to the students was the actual 3D printer itself. If I scroll up a little bit, okay, I have the curriculum information, and I have the different lesson plans here. So there are 5 lessons in all that could go with this particular unit plan. So I wrote up for 3 of them. The first one was 3D printers. If I click on the link, this will bring me to my Google Slides presentation. Nope, I lied, sorry. That brings me to the actual lesson that goes over the objectives, the essential learning, connects, here we go. This connects Google Slide presentation. This connects directly to that presentation that I showed the students. There we go. I introduce it and have them compare and contrast the 2 different types of printers. The traditional copying printer that prints on paper and what type of things that they print on. So we get into a discussion about what the 2 are. What do they think a 3D printer does? What type of items can possibly be printed, or have they heard about printing with this type of computer? Okay, the different types of printers. I go through each one of these slides. I show them that this is the type of printer that we have and how it works. I go into showing them how 3D printers are used within the art world, top 10 applications for 3D printers in art, 3 different artists here, a fashion designer, an architect, how it can be used in architecture, ceramics, and as well as some other things like jewelry making, how it could be used to design items that can be attached to cars, and even something as simple as a phone case. Each one of these are attached to a separate website. If you want, you can take a look. I continue to show the kids then, aside from just in art, how 3D printers are used in other parts of the world and in other areas, such as creating prosthetics for people. There is a school in Japan that uses a 3D printer to help the blind. There is 3D printing actually printing up organs for medical use. So these are just other things I show the kids. Once again, each one of these connects back to YouTube videos. After watching the videos and teaching the students about the 3D printers and how they can be used in various fields, I go into ask the students thought-provoking and leading questions. How they might be using 3D printers in order to create art. What would they create? As well as what type of programs that they would use in order to create the items that would be printed, because this far they've only really used a few other programs and they mostly work two-dimensional. From here, the lesson moves into the actual Tinkercad program. All right, so Tinkercad is the second lesson in the unit. Now, what I ended up doing was I ended up assigning the Tinkercad actual program prior to teaching the printers, because with a project-based class like this, beforehand there was another project students were working on, and there were a bunch of kids who were already finished while some other ones were working. So I had assigned Tinkercad as a lesson that the kids had to, as a homework, and also as a flipped classroom where the students were teaching themselves how to use the program. The link for the actual presentation is within my unit, within my lesson plan. And each one of these Google slide presentations I made on my own. So this would link to Tinkercad. It tells a little bit about the program. It goes into what a CAD program is, and essentially this is what type of program you would use when creating three-dimensional type objects. So this had asked the students to go into Tinkercad to create an account. Once they create an account, it walks them through a few different tutorials. There's an entire section on learning about the program. That's 7 more tutorials to go through. So as you can see, I assigned this for homework. This was assigned on a Tuesday, and this refers back to my unit plan. If I go up to timeline, outline and timeline for overall unit, I have that specified here, exactly what days the students worked on this in class as homework because they were finished, what day I did the 3D printer, what day we went over Tinkercad. So the Tinkercad lesson, students worked on this on their own. After a weekend, we came back on a Monday, and the students, I allowed them to work in class. They came in with any questions or any issues, any troubleshooting that they needed. We went over that. I answered any questions. After practicing and learning the program specifics, the next lesson was a 3D printed keychains and jewelry project. I described the project in detail, what the students needed to have for their work. showcased examples. Now, this was really up to the students exactly what type of object they wanted to create, be it jewelry or keychain, necklace, rings. The kids had creative freedom for this project. Taught them how to save their work in order to be printed. And from there, it took about a week and a half to 2 weeks in order to work on the project and complete it. So here are some pictures of the students working in Tinkercad. Then it took some time for all of the class's items to be printed. Depending on the size of the project, really depended on how long it took to print. But once all of them were printed, then the classes moved to my other art room, where they then painted their work and added extra embellishments. I just want to jump back to my unit plan for a moment. After the outline timeline, after the considering standards models, after the objectives, is additional resources. Here are the related documents of all the Google Slides presentations that I created for each project for the students to follow along with, directions, links to different websites, as well as the instructions. After that is the assessment. So after students finished the 3D printed projects, painting them, adding their embellishments, then what they needed to do was, I chose for the students to reflect on their work by creating Flipgrid videos, about 2 minutes long, answering 4 specific questions. And here they are, right here. If I go to Flipgrid, I created a topic for each period, for period 5 and for period 9. So here is the directions, here are the questions. I even created a little video of myself going through answering the questions, as well as some other tips when videoing themselves, tying back to some of the information we had learned earlier in the year in reference to film. Here we can take a look at one of the students' reflections.
Hello, Miss George, how are you? This is my project. It's a ring. I did it because I wanted a ring, and I just put K for my name on it. And I liked about this project, I like that we used Tinkercad, and I like how much we learned about it, because previously in 8th grade all we did was just like use the text tool and type their name in and then use that to print it. So I like that we actually learned about shapes and how to create like creative things. I thought it was pretty hard for me to find the perfect dimension size for my ring and to measure it out, but eventually I got it and it was alright. I learned patience because, like I said, my ring was not working, and then I just finally got it. I did like, I don't know how many centimeters, but it worked out. That's it, Miss George. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
And it goes on to the next one automatically. But it's fun to watch the kids' reflections. But speaking of reflections, my reflection, I'm just going to go back to my unit plan. Honestly, there were some issues in the beginning, but I was able to work through them on my own, as well as with the help of our amazing and wonderful computer techs. It was also nice to see the excitement the kids had for the project. They did have a little bit of knowledge of it beforehand, but as you'd seen, they got to be a little bit more creative with it, and they really did enjoy watching as their objects were printed and seeing the printer in action. And the fact that they can take a piece of physical work home with them. Even some of the more difficult students who didn't do much during the year, they really enjoyed this project. As I hope you did after watching my presentation. I know this was a little bit on the long side, but I thank you very much for watching.